making a difference.
Question number 11, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education and asks, did she send any of her responses to correspondence she received expressing concern about the government's plan to increase class sizes to the correspondence employers? If so, why?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Yes. It is my practice when I receive a letter from a professional on behalf of a school that I reply to the leadership and governance of that school as well as to the person who wrote the letter representing it. Boards and principals are responsible for their schools and for the representation of their school's views.
Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, did she send any replies to a school board of trustees where the individual writing to her had identified themselves as a teacher but not identified the school they were employed by?
The Honourable, beg your pardon, the Minister not hear the question. I'd ask the member please to repeat the question.
Did she send any replies to a school board of trustees where the individual writing to her had identified themselves as a teacher but not identified the school they were employed by?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
No.
Chris Hipkins. Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a letter from a teacher in Tauranga dated the 5th of April 2012, headed up proposed teacher staffing cuts. I've removed their home address and their name, but all other details remain there and the school is not identified in the letter.
Leave us sort of table that letter. Is there any objection? Order. Leave us sort of table that document, then I'll hear the Minister's point of order. Leave us sort of table the document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Does the Minister wish to raise a point of order?
Yes,
point of order, the Honourable Hekia Parata.
Oh, thank you, Mr Speaker. I understood the question to be asking me whether I had written to their board. I clearly wrote to them at their home, because he's tabling one which has a home address.
That's not strictly a point of order. I realise the Minister is trying to be helpful, though. Further supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, did the Minister write to this correspondent, whose letter I've just tabled, at their home address and not send a letter to that school's Board of Trustees?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
Mr Speaker, in the absence of precedence as to who that letter is from, I'm unable to answer it.
Chris Hipkins.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, did any of the people involved in preparing her replies to the letters she received from teachers expressing concern about her government's plan to increase class sizes access any government database or record system to identify the school the teacher worked at?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
No, Mr Speaker, no. I do not have access to private information about teachers and their schools, nor have I asked for such information from my office staff or from staff at the Ministry. I have absolute confidence that none of my staff or staff from the Ministry would have accessed such information of their own accord. It is distressing to them for the member to assert otherwise.
Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker.
Order.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, if a parent sends her a letter about their child's education using a work email account, does she send the response to that correspondence employer? And if not, how does she make a distinction between them and a teacher?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
Mr Speaker, I make it on the basis of representation. When a teacher writes to me above their position and their school address, I respond accordingly.
Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, can the Minister confirm for the House that in no instance where a teacher wrote from a private email address or using their private home address did she send the response to that letter to the school Board of Trustees that employs that teacher?
The Honourable Hekia Parata.
Mr Speaker, I reiterate, I do not have access to private information about teachers and their schools. I have not sought that information. I have written back to the person in their official capacity to the address from which they have sent the letter. If they have written in a private capacity and written from a private address, they have been responded to accordingly.
Question number 12, Louise Upson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question